The Baseball Together Network presents the North Chicago Baseball Together podcast with your host, Denise. And now, North Chicago Baseball Together.
Hello, this is Denise and welcome to my North Chicago podcast recapping April 2022 and covering the Chicago Cubs for our Baseball Together family. As always, I want to remind you of the Baseball Together discount you can take advantage of just for listening to my podcast. We have some merchandise that's actually pretty cool. Some of it is general baseball themed, some are specific to teams. But for you, there is a discount to all of the North Chicago, that's what we call the Cubs themed items. But it's all the North Chicago merchandise. So if you click on the Baseball Together link in the description of this podcast page, it'll take you directly to our page with all of the North Chicago items. Simply click on the item you'd like, choose your size if necessary, add it to your cart, and then before you check out, just make sure to enter the discount code CUBPOD. It's CUBPOD, all is one word, and you'll save 15%. You can use this code more than once. So again, that code again is CUBPOD. So we're about 3.5 weeks into the season, and the Cubs are honestly what I've expected. They're middle of the road, subpar the last few games, some great plays, and then some head scratchers. And of course, you know, some cheering and some cussing that kind of goes along with watching baseball and being a big fan of whichever team you want. I'll be honest, I get angry even at non-Cub stuff. But, you know, it goes with the flow. That's what happens, right? So they started out pretty well. They got the W on opening day against the Brew Crew. You know, despite the rain and the forecast, it actually held off. My sister came with me. We were dressed in multiple layers. It was a cold game to be at. It's not the coldest I've been to, and we were lucky to have the wind at our backs. So it actually was a little bit like it felt warmer in our seats, and it actually was. But again, we stayed warm enough. We had a blast, and we won the game. And we ended up actually taking 2 of 3 on that opening series against the Brewers. It was supposed to be a 4-game series. One of the games was postponed, and I believe we make it up at the end of May as part of a day-night doubleheader. I think it's on Memorial Day, actually. And then we split the next 2 series. We took 1 of 2 from the Pirates and then 2 of 4 from the Rockies on the road. And then Tampa Bay, the Rays, they came to Chicago. It was some brutally cold weather. I mean, listen, we barely have had a spring here. Everybody and their grandma is sick because this weather's just up and down. We can't get out of the 40s and 50s, although looks like this week I'm hoping we're going to finally turn the corner. But so Tampa Bay came here, brutally cold weather. We lost our first series of the season. Rays took 2 or 3 of those games. And then, you know, the Pirates came into town, and I swear to God, every season, you know, the Pirates are pretty much always last place, but they are just the bane of our existence. We can't seem to beat them. We struggle so much against them. Even in 2016, right? In 2017, when we were making all the playoffs, we won the World Series in 16 and stuff like that. The Pirates just always seem to have our number. It's ridiculous. If it's not the Pirates, it's the Reds. It's like one of the two, but it's usually the Pirates. But anyways, so they ended up taking 3 or 4 of us from home at Wrigley from the Cubs. And the one game we did win, though, that was an historic game. It was a 21-0 shutout. That game was fun. And then, you know, just the other day we lost the rubber match against the Braves in Atlanta. So we're actually today, I'm recording this the first day of May. We're finishing up a road series up at, you know, Wrigley North up in Milwaukee. We've already dropped the first 2, just got absolutely smoked. But, you know, we'll close that out and then move into the rest of May. So right now, we're 5 games under 500. We're in 4th place. We're a game behind the Pirates, who are in 3rd. We're 3.5 behind St. Louis, who are in 2nd. And then the Brewers are leading the division, and we're 6.5 behind them. So again, it's not great. It's not the worst or absolutely horrid, but it's not great. Considering, you know, we kind of started the month pretty decently. And then aside from, you know, opening day with my sister, I did go to the April 24th game against the Pirates with my friend's daughter, Marilyn. You know, she hadn't been to a game in a while, so I went ahead and took her. They did lose the game 4-3, but we still had fun. So for attendance, I'm kind of 1-1. I'm planning 2 more games minimum, at least in May. One this coming Wednesday on my birthday, and that's against the White Sox. And those tickets I actually won from Marcus Strowman on Twitter, so I actually don't know where I'm sitting yet, because they have to confirm the seats. They said, yeah, you can go to the game, but they'll wrap everything up later this week. And then I'm going on Mother's Day with my bestie, Christy. It was supposed to be a day game against the Dodgers, and that is actually going to be a ESPN Sunday Night Baseball. So that'll be a Sunday night game. So other than that, so kind of just, as we're starting out, some of the things that have just already annoyed me, right, in a sense, is, first off, the off-season moves, we all wanted Carlos Correa since, we lost Javi to the Tigers. And even though we had Nico Horner, we still wanted another shortstop. So everybody was hoping we'd get Carlos Correa. And then we ended up signing, Andrelton Simmons, just to a 1-year deal, and ultimately didn't really sign any other big-name shortstops, right? So it's like, okay, we've got Nico, probably going to be our starting shortstop because Nick Madrigal was coming back, and we were going to have him at second. And I didn't expect Simmons to start over Nico, but right away Simmons went on the 10-day IL 3 days before opening day with right shoulder inflammation. So before we even started, we lost at minimum our backup shortstop. So now we do have Jonathan VR, and he's a utility guy. He can play second, short, and third. And he's got a pretty good at-bat, right? He's hitting, I don't know, upper threes, something like that. So, I mean, he's hitting decently, but he can't play defense. His defense has just been subpar. And he's played the 3 positions, right? He's played second, short, third. And he's made the most errors, I believe, at short. If not, it's at third. It's one of the two. He simply cannot defend on the left side of the field. He's great at second, but you put him at short and third, and I think his fielding percentage is like in the 800s. He's made 2 errors at each position. One of them was costly because it allowed the inning to continue, and I think it resulted in like 2 extra runs at least. But it's frustrating. So it's like, yeah, he's there and he can back up Nico, if Nico needs a day off or something, but the defense is going to kill us. And I haven't seen an update on when Simmons will be back. So we really kind of need his defense for when Nico or Madrigal, need a day off. If Nico has a day off, put Simmons there. Madrigal needs a day off, throw Nico to second and still put Simmons at short, and not that I want to take VR's bat out of the lineup, have him DH in that case, or he can be the backup to Madrigal. But right now, man, he's just having a rough time on the left side of that field. So that was like, kind of the first thing that I was kind of frustrated at. And then the other thing, Alfonso Rivas, I said, Schwindel's going to be our starting first baseman. Rivas is going to be his backup. And, I want to see him stay up here. He's off to a great start. And then randomly they optioned him back to AAA like a week after opening day. I don't know why, because they didn't call anybody else up in his place. And Schwindel doesn't really have another first, backup. We don't have another first baseman. I guess Contreras can play first if you want to throw Gomes, or maybe, whatever, throw Gomes there or something like that. But we didn't have another first baseman. So I didn't really understand why Rivas was sent down, because he wasn't struggling at all. But then ultimately though, he was only down there for about a week because we had to put Clint Frazier on the IL, who ended up having an emergency appendectomy and appendicitis. So he's on the IL for a bit as he's recovering from that. So we call Rivas back up. But even since coming back, he's hitting 444. His on-base percentage is only about 524, but his OPS is 1.191. So, I mean, this guy needs to be on the lineup. And don't get me wrong, I love me some Frank the Tank, right? But Rivas should be in this lineup every single day at this point, whether he's starting at first or just being in there as a DH. There's no reason that he should be sitting every other game. And Ross has used him as a DH, and he has used him as a, he's had Schwindel sit. Schwindel kind of got into a bit of a slump, so he had him sit for a couple of games, and, Rivas started a couple of games, but I didn't understand that move, and I was kind of like, it made my head scratch. I don't know. And then, my other biggest pet peeve right now, I seem to have a lot of them this month already. We're only 3.5 weeks into the season, our outfield, right? So with the exception of Suzuki and Happ, we just don't have offense. Hermosillo apparently left his bat in Mesa because he's hitting below the Mendoza line at .083 in 24 at-bats, and he's striking out at a clip of about 50% of the time. His defense is fantastic. He chases seemingly everything down. He makes the most impossible catches sometimes. He did make one error where he went to kind of let the ball hop in front of him, and then it took a bad hop and it got away from him. So it should have been a single, and it turned into a triple. But then the play right after, he made this amazing catch over his shoulder, crashing into the wall, right? But I really hope they figure out his bat soon, because he's really wanted as the backup / replacement for Jason Hayward, right? And speaking of J-Hay, he started out fantastically. He was hitting well over his career numbers, but now again, he's coming back down. He's still above his career at 270, but he's been a rally killer lately. His fielding's still great, but I'm sorry, we need offense, right? And then you've got Rafael Ortega, and he's the opposite of Hayward, where Ortega started out horribly, but he's picked up as of late. He was hitting below 200, and now I think he's his average right now is just above 200, but the last 7 games he's hitting, I think, right around 240, so he's picking it up. And again, he's got some great fielding too, but he's mainly being used as a DH. And when he is in the outfield, he's not making any, hasn't made an error yet, knock on wood, but he's mainly being used as a DH. Happ is great in left field, and at bat. He started hot and he stayed hot. Suzuki, he's pretty consistent. He was named NL Rookie of the Week, earlier in April. I think it was the second week of the year. He has cooled off a bit now, but he's still pretty consistent. Defensively, he's still trying to figure out some of the angles and such of all the different ballparks. I don't really expect him to go anywhere. He's going to stay our starting right fielder. I don't know if the league is starting to figure him out, because he's striking out a little bit more, and he's usually a contact hitter. But when he is making contact, he's, grounding out or flying out. So, he's still, he's still making contact, but he's striking out a little bit more. He has been hosed on some bad called strikes, that, they should have been balls and they were called as strikes. So, he's expanded his zone a little bit because of that. But he is striking out a little bit more. But again, I still love him. The guy, he's a lot of fun. And the rest of the fielders have been all right? Some were off to a slow start, like I said, like Schwindel and Patrick Wisdom, Nick Madrigal, but they're coming back around. Nico's been hitting consistently so far all season, so that's really pleasant to see. Wilson Contreras and Yan Gomes are both hitting consistently, and we're all still yelling at the Cubs management to extend Contreras because, that guy just plays with his heart on his sleeve every single game. But the problem with our offense is that we can't seem to string anything together. It's like a solo home run here, one there, or we finally get a few guys on, but they're on with 2 outs and then we just can't bring them in, right? We can't seem to just get over that hump. And it's so frustrating because on paper, the stats that these guys have, our team should be at least 500, if not above, and yet we're sitting 5 games below. So it's aggravating, it's head scratcher, and again, I don't expect a World Series out of these guys. Some consistency would be really nice once in a while, and some good consistency, not consistently, losing. So anyways, and as a side note, I mentioned Wilson, right, and how he just plays with his heart on his sleeve. So a few games ago, they were in Atlanta, and Wilson and his brother William, so William's on the Braves, they exchanged lineup cards at home at home plate before the game. And then they totally like bro hugged it out. Wilson ended up, kind of getting emotional, even teared up during the post game when he was asked about it, but he basically just said, he was like, they both dreamed of making it to the big leagues as little kids growing up in Venezuela. And the fact that they both did, right, like kind of, not too far away from each other. I mean, it's rare. So he said he's so proud of his little brother, and they just thought this was like the best way they could honor their parents was to exchange the cards and etc. It was awesome to see. Absolutely loved it. And, you just gotta love baseball sometimes. It's such an emotional sport. But anyways, so now on to our pitching. And I think this is another big reason why we're not winning, aside from not being able to string the offense together, is our pitching. Again, started out great. But now our starters, we can't even seem to get through more than 3 or 4 innings without giving up a few runs before. Stop me if you've heard this before, right? It seems to be our theme the last few years. But then when they actually do have a quality start out of a pitcher, they're not getting any offensive support. So it's like everybody, wants to blame the pitcher when we lose, 2-0. Oh, he gave up the 2 runs, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, our team didn't score anything. We got 3 hits, right? Like, what do you want them to do? Nobody's going to have a 0 ERA as a starter for their entire, career or entire season. So it's like either we're hitting a bunch, but then the starters can't seem to settle down or, finish out a batter. And then if they do have a quality start, then we're not getting the offense. We're not getting in sync. Kyle Hendricks, man, he's been hit or miss. It's so frustrating. When he's on, he's so on and he's unhittable. But man, when he is just missing spots, and it's not like he's missing a ton, but he's just getting smoked. I mean, his ERA in 5 games is already at 5.47. His whip's 1.50. Both of those are well above his career numbers. Justin Steele, again, started out strong, but his last 3 starts have been less than desirable. He's got similar number to Hendricks in ERA and whip, and he hasn't lasted much past 4 innings. Marcus Strowman has been the biggest surprise. He's had 2 good quality starts, but he has no run support. And then the other 2 starts, he just got absolutely lit up. One of them was it's really bad. And his ERA is almost double his career numbers. And I'm hoping, like, as he kind of continues to settle in with the new team, he has pitched, to be fair, with some really cold games at Wrigley, but I'm hoping he can, get back on track. Because again, the 2 starts that he did have, he had no run support. Alec Mills went onto the IL right before the start of the regular season with a low back strain. About a week ago, he was sent to AAA Iowa for a rehab assignment, so hopefully he can come back. He wasn't doing great in spring training, so I'm hoping when he gets back, the fact that he was kind of sent onto the IL, right after spring training, right before opening day, maybe something was bothering him already in spring training. So hopefully when he comes back, he can, get his numbers back down. But so we had brought up Mark Leiter Jr. to start, and honestly, he was a body to fill a spot start. He really was. In 4 games, he only lasted 10 1/3 innings, and his ERA is close to 8. He was just recently optioned to AAA Iowa. We brought up Locke St. John in his place. But yeah, I was not impressed with him at all. Again, 4 games and got 10 1/3 innings. So that's averaging, 2.5 innings a start. And Drew Smiley, he's actually been our best starter so far. Right now he's got a 2.79 ERA across 4 games. So just kind of hoping he can stay healthy and, we actually have a decent starter, if the rest of these guys can't figure it out. But, if that wasn't bad enough, remember how I said, like, Wade Miley, he usually start slow in the spring, right? He doesn't get out there and start. He's not a starter right away. He doesn't start throwing a ton of bullpen sessions. Shouldn't be anything too concerning because they haven't mentioned anything. Yeah, well, he's on the 10-day IL. He's got some left elbow inflammation. I haven't seen an ETA on him to return. So here I am all excited to have, we got Wade Miley, off of the waivers immediately with, that low risk, high option or et cetera. And now he's on the IL. So there we go. The biggest surprise right now has been Keegan Thompson. He's been amazing in long inning relief when these starters can't seem to get anything going. In 5 games, he's got a .54, so 0.54 ERA, 0.84 WHIP, and he's got an MLB leading WAR of 1.2. He did get ejected and suspended for 3 games after opening weekend because, Andrew McCutchen on the Brewers threw a hissy fit when he got hit by a pitch. Now, to be fair, you could tell it was probably intentional at that point. This was the 3rd game of the series. But to be even more fair, the Brewers had already hit more of our guys the first 2 games, including Contreras twice. Shocker, right? Because Contreras always gets pegged by the Brewers. And then there was one on the back of the knee to Happ, which actually took him out of the game and the next few games. So here McCutchen gets hit on the hip and, starts jawing, and there had been no warnings up to this point, even though the Cubs players had been hit at like a rate of like 5-2. No warnings. And here our guy gets ejected, and Thompson got suspended for 3 games. Ross got suspended a game. And it's aggravating because the Brewers got away and they continue to get away with hitting so many players across the league with no warnings. But then if somebody hits a Brewers player, right, the team that did the hitting got the punishment. Yet, so everybody's like, well, it's always the team that retaliates. It's always the team that retaliates. Okay, then explain this, right? So now the Cardinals and Mets got into a plunking war earlier this week, right? And one of the Cardinals players, Nolan Arenado, got a high inside pitch. And he got pissed, and again, you could tell it was in retaliation, right? So thinking, all right, well, the Cubs hit the Brewers in retaliation. The Cubs pitcher got suspended. You're thinking in this case, the Mets player is going to get suspended. Nope. Nolan Arenado got suspended because he got ticked off enough that he started yelling. It incited the benches clearing. So maybe that's their reasoning because he didn't walk away and the catcher and the umpire tried to get in between him and the pitch, him jawing at the pitcher, and Arenado threw the Mets catcher aside. But it incited benches clearing. But again, so it wasn't the Mets who got in trouble for hitting him, which, again, you could argue wasn't intentional, wasn't not. It was Arenado, and then one of the Cardinals coaches, Genesis Cabrera, got for their actions basically before and during the argument. So there's no consistency on how they're handling the punishments. Like, apparently, unless you're the Brewers, you can kind of get away with anything. Anyways, off my soapbox there and back to Keegan Thompson here. So kind of the decision that you have, right? Sorry, I went on a tangent. But the decision that you have here with Thompson, he's the best pitcher in the MLB in WAR right now as a long reliever. So do you leave him as the long reliever when your starters are clearly struggling, or do you swap him and Steele? Put Thompson in as the starter, put Steele in as a reliever. You don't want to mess up Keegan's mojo, right? If he's doing really good as the long reliever and you can still get 3 or 4 innings out of him, but if you can get 3 or 4 innings out of him, then put him in as a starter. And Steele, his last game, he couldn't get through 3 innings and 79 pitches without losing his command, and he said he was quote getting tired. Like, at that point, then something's got to change. Then maybe Steele isn't a starter. Maybe you got to put him in as a reliever, and then put Keegan in as a starter instead. So aside from Thompson, the only other real reliable reliever we've had who has seemed to be our closer is David Robertson. He's 4 for 4 in save opportunities. He hasn't given up a run. His whip is lower than Thompson at 0.58. He struck out 11 batters in about 8 2/3 innings, and he's walked 4. But because the offense has fallen off the tracks lately, he hasn't had many opportunities. So now he's kind of come in just to, kind of keep warm and keep doing this. But I like him in the closer role for now, as long as we can give him a closing opportunity. We DFA'd Corey Abbott. We traded Jesse Chavez to the Braves for Sean Newcomb, who I haven't seen enough yet to judge an opinion, but the little I've seen, meh. I would have preferred Chavez, but whatever, it is what it is. And like I said, we called up Locke St. John from AAA. And that's about it. The rest of the relievers, I mean, they've been okay. Michael Gibbons, he did have one bad, third inning. He got the first 2 outs really quickly and then just couldn't get that last out. Ended up, I think, loading the bases, which resulted in some runs. But he's been pretty good. Scott Efros and Rowan Wick have been very effective. I'm not overly impressed with Chris Martin. I'm on the fence with Michael Rucker and Ethan Roberts. Man, I love this kid. But he still does need some work. Again, he's like Hendricks. He's right on the money, or he's so far off it's maddening. And he's like Craig Kimbrell for me. I said this last year. I want him to do well so badly because I just love this kid. And it's just heartbreaking when he isn't. This is his first season in the bigs. I'm really hoping that they can tweak his mechanics to get him back to his form from spring training and the minors. Because I really want to see him do well. That's about it for the Cubs for the first month. Again, I don't have super high expectations. I didn't have super high expectations even to start or for the whole season. There definitely been some bright spots. There's been some fun, but we're just going to have to see how the next few weeks play out and kind of go from there. So as off the Cubs, I do need to mention, right? If you guys know me, I love me some Kyle Schwarber. He's now on the Phillies, and for a while he was in the leadoff spot, and again, he was hitting below 200. But he was moved down to the lineup, and now he's lighting it up a bit, right? So, but aside from that, Kyle spoke for all of baseball last week. And when I mean all of baseball, it's for all the players, all the fans, everything. He absolutely lost his dang mind in a game with the ever so popular umpire, Angel Hernandez, who was the home plate ump. So the Phillies are playing the Brewers. It was a close game. The Brewers are only up 1-0. Angel's calls had been absolutely horrendous all game for both sides. Pitches that were, a good 4-6 inches off the plate were being called strikes. Pitches that were in the K zone or just, on the edge, but should be a strike, they were being called balls. Again, typical Angel Hernandez, no consistency. So Kyle had already been rung up already on some couple of bad pitches. So here we are, bottom of the ninth, Josh Hader's pitching for the Brewers. Now, to Hader's credit, he's pretty filthy, but he isn't perfect. And sometimes when he's off, he's off. He can lose his command. And so the count's 3-2. I don't remember if there were no outs or 1 outs, but the bases were empty. Count was 3-2. Hader threw a pitch on the outer right part of the plate. Remember, Schwarber's a lefty. So he threw it on the outer part of the plate, and it was a ball. It was outside by about 2 inches. And Kyle started to walk to first. And Angel Hernandez rung him up for strike 3. And Schwerber just lost it. Threw his bat down, threw his helmet. Granted, he threw them facing away from Angel. He didn't throw it at him, but immediately ejected right there. But he just went off on Angel Hernandez, basically saying he's motioning on the outside of the plate. You missed it here. Motioning on the inside of the plate. You missed it there. Coming up to the top. You missed it up here. Everywhere. It was like a Dr. Seuss rhyme. It was hysterical. He's like, this is BS. It's effed up. Swearing, everything. Just continued to yell at him as his team is leading him away. Just absolutely lost his mind. So Joe Girardi, who's the manager of the Phillies, he came out, and he's talking to Angel and talking to him rather calmly, but you can tell he's like, listen, Angel, you've got to be better. You just have to. You have to be better. It's bad. It's so bad. And you can't be bad. And even Hader, when he saw it was called a strike, he kind of turned away off the mound. And you can see like him smirking because he knew it was such a bad call. And Kutch, who was out in center for the Brewers, like he just kind of stood there like shaking his head incredulously. You know, he had been part of a bad call too. They all knew Kyle was right. Everybody knew that Kyle was right. And Kyle was just like, you know what? I'm done. This is ridiculous. And I'm going to say what I'm going to say. And I don't care. I don't care if I get ejected. I don't care if I get fined. Somebody's got to say it. And Kyle was the one that stood up. And, you know, it's like, I know being an ump isn't easy, especially being a home plate ump, right? But when you're graded consistently below 95%, below 90% for accuracy. And I'm not talking about MLB's grading because they seemingly think that all their umpires are perfect. But the actual strike zone grading, right? If you're looking at a computer model and this is the strike zone and you're just that horrible, then you shouldn't be a home plate umpire. MLB, you want to keep Angel as an umpire? Fine. But stop putting him behind the plate. It's that simple. Just don't. Don't sit there and say that we can't promote him or we can't give him playoff games because of his overall performance. That's what they stated in his lawsuit, right? He filed a lawsuit against the MLB claiming discrimination, that he wasn't getting promoted and he wasn't being picked to work playoff, and World Series games. And MLB came back and said, well, no, it's just based on your performance. Okay, well, if his performance is that bad, then stop putting him behind the plate. Like, that's hypocritical. You're being hypocritical at that point. He's impacting game results, and then you come back and say, well, our grading system gave him a 96%. Okay, well then, to his point then, if he's at a 96% when every single player on those two teams just totally had it with him, and they know he's horribly inaccurate, then stop doing it. Stop putting it behind home plate. Anyways, but if you, by some miracle, you didn't see that viral blow up of Schwerber, just Google it because it's just hysterical. And it makes me love him more. So anyway, that about wraps up my Cubs podcast here for April of 2022. Remember that you can listen to our Baseball Together casts wherever you get your podcasts. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, rate, review, share with your other baseball friends. Remember to click on the Baseball Together link in the description and use that discount code of CubPod to save 15% on all your North Chicago apparel. As always, feel free to send me any questions, suggestions for topics, etc., and I will see you all at the end of May. Bye.